quick break. Just to let you guys know, the book is out. My book is out, and I'm super excited. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. It's on sale on Amazon, so you can now grab your copy. Do leave me a review on Amazon, comment, DM me if you have any questions, and let's keep on sharing our stories. And now, let's go back to our episode. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Alex Balgood, and this is Leap of Health. Today, we have Ed Mendieta. He's a professional mechanical engineer in LEED. And I'm super excited to talk to him today. He's one of my awesome professional friends. So I'm excited to talk to him about the quality of air and the things that we can do to better the air indoors. Thank you for being here today, Ed.
Anytime. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Let's start with, what is LEED?
All right. People call it LEED, like lead professional or lead accredited professional. And that's leadership in energy and environmental design. So people out there in the industry who want to design or operate their buildings, it's a guideline criteria that people can build to or operate to, and get a nice little plaque in front of your building.
Nice. And that's also the people that it's going towards the eco-friendly equipment and things like that, right?
Yep. And it's I mean, what's nice about it is that it shows you how to do it, and the hardest thing nowadays is to get people to do something a certain way. And this is very detailed, in a good way.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of companies are not like to inform, or they don't know all these alternatives that they can do to better their buildings with like better equipment and ways to have like a better quality of air within their properties?
Yeah, I think that people know what they need to do. It's just that everything has a return on investment. So you have to know what you want to do. And so nowadays with COVID, people have been focused a little bit more on indoor air quality. And
Yes.
that's just one of 5 areas in LEED. It's called building and construction. It's one of the areas. And so, like, for instance, that's probably an area now that they look at that section of indoor air quality more so than they did, 5 or 10 years ago because of COVID.
Yeah, for sure. But not only this is important for like the business part, but it's super important to have something like that within our homes. What are some of the things that we can do when it comes to like these filters or certain stuff that we can do in our home to better the quality of air?
Sure. I'm going to go from my notes here because I know there are like a few areas that that are important. And so the first one is ventilation. And so depending on how new or how old your home is, your your air, maybe getting into your house if it's older a little easier. It's called infiltration. So if you have a new home, the homes are normally a little tighter. They don't allow inner air to come in or out of the house. And so each one comes with its set of problems. So as far as ventilation goes, that's one area you can focus on your homes. If you have better ventilation, then you're going to have less particles, less particulates in the air. And you're also going to have, less, like, let's just say if you use cleaners in your bathroom, or you use oven cleaner in your kitchen, or somebody's doing something to where maybe you're putting something on your nails, and you know how that smells. So if you have ventilation, you get rid of those, which are called volatile organic compounds, VOCs. Or maybe you just installed a rug, and that has its smell and it has those VOCs. And so with increased ventilation, that helps. Also, if people are sick in your home, you get to move that air outside, or bring outside air in and displace that. and it makes for a healthier environment. Those are a few things.
Hmm. What are some of the other points that you were thinking of? Sure.
So when I talked about infiltration, it's if you have air conditioning, then you want to control the amount of air that, you have areas to where you don't want to have that air coming in through your windows. If you can control it, if you're going to have an air conditioned home, it's just better to have a tighter home. And so that also helps in terms of energy efficiency, because, like, let's just say you're in Texas where you're at, and you have high humidity, or maybe you have much colder temperatures than we would here in California. And
Hmm.
also, just to let people know that I'm here in California, so what I say is, more from what I'm more familiar with. But I know in other climates,
Hmm.
you can't have that humid air just finding its way into your home. You want to have those double pane windows or energy efficient windows, or maybe those cracks underneath the door or wherever. You want to have those sealed up so that you can, if you have air conditioning, you have better control over your air conditioning. And then also, you're not spending all that energy having to remove all that humidity. If you're in Texas, if you have all of those, air coming in through all those windows, so if you control it, that's better. The downside of that is that you definitely have to control that ventilation, because now your home is more sealed. So picture a home that's sealed, the windows are all nice, and you have less infiltration. What happens if you just leave everything sitting in your home? You have to mechanically ventilate that. Or what you can do, another thing that we did here in our home, and I'm in Southern California, so the temperature swings aren't as great as other parts of the country, but in a somewhat temperate climate that we're in, I put in what's called a whole house fan. And you can get those at Home Depot and have those installed. And if you have someone else do it, it could be less than a couple of $1,000s, but it's a really good investment, because otherwise, if you don't have air conditioning, then you can run that, and what you're doing is you're pulling in all of that outside air, and you have fresh air in the home, and you're pushing that air that was once in your home, through the attic and out. There's little vents that you have in your attic to where it can go out in. So you also have it for energy efficiency, because now, maybe our house was cold and we can bring in warm air, or our house was warm, we can bring in cool air in the morning. So it does two things at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome that you mentioned all these differences between states. Like California, we're usually pretty good, all temperatures. We don't get too many crazy ups and downs. Now that I have moved to Texas, I can tell you that's not what's happening here. We're like either super cold or super humid one day. So we do have these changes in temperature that obviously, when the heat waves come, you don't want all the humidity inside. And it's cool to see now. Like, I know I've never saw these in California. I think it has to be in step by state in regards on how they work their AC. But I know, like, even like our filters for our house, we have to kind of like change them every month because we run the AC so much, which is something that in California we never did. Like, I mean, we probably had to, but I don't even remember seeing those filters. Which over here, you go to the market, to the superstore, and they have them on the cleaning aisle, like if there's toilet paper.
Yep.
So I thought that was like, I was like, what is this? First of all, and then I realized it was the filters for our AC. How important do you think is like to change them? Because I don't even know. Do we have those in California, or it just depends
Yes.
from state to state?
Most homes that have air conditioning systems will have a filter. And since we do not run our air conditioning as much here in California, you probably don't see about it or hear about it.
Right.
So there's a couple of parts of filtration to where on one side, you know, it's like a barrier in the air, and you've seen them, right? So you're pushing that air through this opaque pleated material. Looks like paper, right?
Hmm.
And so that requires energy, because there's, like you're trying to push something through a medium. So that's what's called a pressure drop. So you do need to, it requires a little bit more energy to push that air through a filter. And from that standpoint, that's the downside of filters. But if you need it, you need it. And
Yeah.
the higher or the more you use it, the higher the pressure drop. And so what happens with your air conditioning systems, your home air conditioning systems, it burdens the air conditioning system, like in your areas. If you don't change it as frequently as you need to, then you'll eventually come across issues because that pressure drop is so great that your fan is just working too hard. And so you do need to change it. So one side of it is energy, but the other side of it is that it's there for a purpose. It's there to
Clean, right?
to capture particles.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are into the whole thing of making sure that depending on your health, if you are sensitive to particulates, then yeah, you can get some pretty high rated filters. They're called MERV filters. There's different numbers that go beside them. You can have like a MERV 8, a MERV 13, a MERV 15. And the higher the number, the smaller the particulate that it prevents from passing through that filter. And so, for instance, I'm thinking about putting in a MERV 15 here in our home. And it's just, we're in Orange County, so it's not something that I'm going to have to change every month. But the nice thing is that if you pair that with something like it's called a bipolar ionization. Um, it's like an air purification system. Then you're pretty much, you're running your ventilation, but you're capturing more particles in that filter. And so, there are a lot of disclaimers as to the extent that something like these purifiers can actually help with COVID, because no one wants to say something and then they still get sick, but it does
Right.
improve things. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want me to talk about those technologies, but there are ways of purifying the air such that you can capture more particles in a filter, like that bipolar ionization.
Yeah, I was actually, that was my next question. What's your take on those I guess small units that purify the air? That they
Well,
can be like from a very small personal one to an actual bigger one that could be in each room. And they're like pretty pricey, I know.
yeah, it does add up. And, if you have the opportunity to do a central purification system, that's just going to be cheaper, because then you have, and then they get in the way because you have these things running in your room. So you can
Yeah.
have them in your central air system. And, I don't know if you want to say they're affordable or not. This is something that I know more of the technology rather than the exact pricing of what goes in residential. But I have friends of mine that have installed these in their homes. And so you have that, what's called bipolar ionization. Then also you have ultraviolet light, which you have these systems which are actually, I guess you can say, rendering um, I don't even know the word for it, but if you have like a coronavirus, it basically kills it.
Right,
It
right.
renders it, I guess, useless, if you want to say. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
mechanical engineer, so I don't know the biological terms, but
Yeah.
it does improve with your health, because anything that could potentially make you sick, you're going to kill it with UV light. And so
Yes.
that's another way of taking care of the issue or mitigating the issue. You're never going to hear anyone say that, all right, this solves the problem. It
Right.
just makes it better. So both of those are two home level systems that you can install or consider. They make them, for the size of homes, and they do install them in businesses as well. I
Mm-hmm.
don't hear it as often, but you can.
Yeah, I know at my previous job, we had the UV light and air purifier, but it was one of those big machines that like the wheels, you could roll it everywhere. So we could like put it in different rooms if we needed to. And it was because of that. We used to see patients all the time, so obviously we wanted like a higher thing to, if for any case someone had COVID, this UV light definitely will like kill everything and pretty much kind of like disinfect there, if you will. So it was a cool thing to have. Are those some is are those systems like, do you just install them? Do you have to replace them, or do they last longer? Or like, I'm not sure how that will work with those systems. Do you just install it and it's there forever? Is that how it works?
Well, you do install and it's there forever, but the extent to which you have to maintain that, I'm not really familiar with it.
Mm,
So
okay.
unfortunately, I didn't look into it deeper before this, but I
Yeah.
know that they are something that are reasonable for you
Hmm.
installing in the home, and as far as maintenance, I don't know exactly how you maintain them.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it will be nice, for everybody that is listening and is interested in, upgrade their filter system and air conditioner and air purifying system to look into some of this that we mentioned. I think it'll be worth to just look into. I think they definitely make the quality of air better. As you said, the quality of even like our health is better, because
Mhm.
also the worse we breathe, the worse we get like sinuses and all these other like health things, depending on what you're being exposed. So that's pretty cool to look into that. What are some of the other cheap changes that for people that has like smaller budgets to just kind of like have a or start with, baby step on getting their quality of air better at home?
So another thing that I want to point out is that, LEED, then it's called existing buildings. It's another rating system for operating buildings.
Mm,
And so one side of it is like all the things that we're talking about, to where, if you're going to install an air conditioning system, yeah, we talked about making sure that you have enough, filtered air, you bring in enough outside air. It's all to code. And so whoever your contractor that's installing that, if they're licensed and they know what they're doing, then they'll be able to figure all that out for you, how big your system needs to be. But you can say, I do want good filtration. So you can ask for a MERV 13 or MERV 15 filter. You want to say, I'll make sure I'm bringing that outside air in. And also from LEED, what they talk about is source control. So if it turns out that you can use a more environmentally friendly cleaner in your home, that does make a difference.
mm,
Or if it's a choice between using one type of carpet over another, there are rating systems in there in terms of the amount of VOCs that are in the carpet. If you're going to paint your home, or you're going to do, in this LEED existing buildings, they talk about facility alterations. Well, in your home, if you're
yeah.
gonna build something,
Hmm.
why not look at the paints? And when you go over to your paint supply, say, hey, something. What's your most environmentally friendly, low VOC paint that I could use? So you have to always think about source control, and even when you're vacuuming, the type of filters that you use for your vacuuming. How well are you cleaning it? It does make a difference, because now you have less VOCs in the air. And so
Hmm.
that's one way of saying, well, then whatever system I put in the home, maybe I can't put it in right now, but at least I can work on the source of those VOCs.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't think about that until you mentioned it, but I think that's such a great point to point that out at this moment, because as you said, a lot of people don't have like the budget to change their air conditioning or filtering system. So just know what you use at home, as whether it's paint, carpet, and other things that we're kind of like inhaling all these particles from it. I think it's a great way to see it. Whatever it's more eco-friendly is going to be also friendly for you.
Yeah, that
so
sounds good.
so I think that's awesome. I know one of the things I use at home for anyone that's listening out there. And this, you could do your own research and make your own decisions, as whether you agree with me or not. But I do use a lot of plants. A lot of plants tend to filter the air. And it almost like, I feel like it makes it fresher, and they look nice. It makes you happy. There's so many cool benefits, and they're cheap too. So definitely look into that up if you're looking to get some, uh, you know, something to get the quality of air better. Plants are great, they're cheap, and as I said, they make you happy. Uh, what are some of the other uh, things that we can do for not just for home, but maybe like um or businesses if people owns their own office and they have terrible carpet and they want to just bring something that that it can help with the quality of air if the building is not doing, they don't have like the best system or it's an old building.
Yeah, I mean, still there's all these different things that you can do that aren't, as intuitive. Like, say, for instance, you have entryway systems in the buildings, and you
Mhm.
walk into a building and there's nothing there. You basically just bring outside whatever was in your shoes, whatever dust and dirt, it's going to end up in the building because there is no entryway system. So
Mhm.
there are these systems to where, what you're doing is you're trying to get rid of any of the particulate from coming into the building in the first place. So this is another credit, so to speak, in this lead existing building systems is entryway systems. Also, the types of pesticides that you use in the buildings, you can use, sustainable systems to where instead of, blasting the building with all of these pesticides, again, you're working from the source. So you're going to, and what I'm trying to say is like, instead of having that pesticide inside your building, in order to avoid that, it's a matter of controlling the source. So you have a lot of people, a lot of pest control people. If you say, okay, I want to have more of a sustainable, environmentally friendly, healthier way of eradicating, all of these pests. And they'll say, well, something, why are you leaving food in the offices? Why are you leaving food all over the place? And so, that's funny because I had an ex-roommate, he used to leave food in his room and we used to have all these arguments. And I wasn't going to get into details, but I said, that does attract pests. And so when the pests come in, then what are you going to use? It's too late. You're going to have to use the types of things that, you're not going to want inside of your home, like pesticides or, uh, rat killer or whatever. So it's a way of thinking. You don't want to get these particulates into your building. You don't want these pesticides to be in your building in the first place. And so all of these are really interesting in terms of looking into what are other ways we can avoid that. And it really is just common sense. It's like,
Mhm.
what's bringing these pests into the building? Oh, we're leaving food in the building. Oh, we're not closing, or we're not storing the food in the right areas. These, or the trash cans, the way that we have the trash cans all open. Maybe we want to have them sealed up. So those are a couple other things in buildings that a lot of times people don't really think about.
Yeah, for sure. I think it just from what you're telling us, I like that it goes back to our basics. Pretty much, let's be clean, first of all. I think being clean, having your house neat, and even with the shoes, I know a lot of people likes to walk around the whole house with their shoes. Some people leaves them outside, which is a whole other conversation, whether you're an indoor shoe or outside door shoe. But it's true. I think everything that we do, it really will affect how the quality of air within it in our home, or whether it's in the office, the way we clean the kitchen or leave things in the office. I think it's just thinking about those basics. I think it will actually help in the long run with the big picture, which is what we're talking about with the quality of air. So that's awesome to really think about it. I was I don't think I was aware of like the source, but now when you said that, it really click, and I'm like, of course, if you go back to the source, we don't really, not that we don't need this filtration systems and the AC and all that, but I think like it really help us to make things better. So that was an awesome point to say. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us in regards of like things that we could do at home, or cool things that or technology that's coming up now that we can use for uh, better quality of air?
Sure. So when we breathe, and we exhale. I don't know if you know, but carbon dioxide, we release carbon dioxide. And so if you're in a room, and let's just say you're in a closet, a very, very small space, and it's sealed, and you have what's called a CO2 meter in that closet with you. As time goes on, that CO2 starts building, and it's a good indication as to the need for ventilation in a space. So I was a teacher here at a local community college, and I had access to all of these gadgets, and one of them was a CO2 sensor. Now those are probably running about $100, but I used to run around with this at my last office, and it's one of these small offices, a relatively like small building, one owner, maybe 3 levels, and I had a good relationship with their facilities people. So I used to run around with my CO2 sensor, because I'm just, that geeky kind of guy. And, I would let them know. I'd say, there's really no ventilation here in these areas, in my office in particular, even though you can hear the air moving through those diffusers, you can hear the air conditioning, but on the back end, when you have a system, you can introduce outside air. And most of the time, these systems just aren't operating the way they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for you. It's just, I think that it's a good little tool to have in whatever office you're in. And, you'd have to look it up, but basically it's in parts per million. And if you're over 1,000 parts per million, it'll give you this range. Hey, that's not good. And the higher it goes, the worse the worse your indoor air conditioning or condition is, and you need more ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do with that information? At least you can tell people there in your building where you're working, say, hey, something, why is the CO2 level so high here?
Mm-hmm.
This is just a, basic indication that we need ventilation. Well, most buildings are not being operated the way they're designed. And so this LEED existing building, what I used to do was building commissioning. All we're doing with all these buildings is just getting people to operate them the way that they were designed. And it's unfortunate, but most buildings are not. And so that's a little tool that you can have. If you want to spend $100 on a CO2 meter, it's an indication of, the level of ventilation that you require in your space. And so I've used that in the past, but again, I am who I am. And it was, I think, sometimes I just try not to say all these fancy words, and I'll just say, just fix it. Just fix it. Trust me.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I actually, for whoever is listening, if you actually own a building or own your own house, I think it's worth to see the level of OC.
CO2.
CO2, sorry.
Carbon dioxide.
Right. Checking the levels of CO2, just because, you own the building. So you do want to make sure it's working properly and that there's actually fresh air coming in, as opposed to just all this CO2 getting built up on your building. And if you own your own house, I think it's also worth to actually look into that and making sure your systems are working, because at the end of the day, you are the owner. And even if you are renting, but you feel like you get the sinuses every month, and you get all this like running noise, little things like allergies and things like that, I think checking for that, I think it's also good, because sometimes we think like, oh, it's just like the building, it's just my house, whatever, it'll go away. But I think at the long run, you might have like other things coming up, and it's not that bad. And I'm sure there's all these other companies that might sell it for cheap or whatever, but I think it'll be like a cool thing to actually just take a look, see if how good of quality of air you're actually breathing every day. So that's pretty cool. Thank you for the tip. Thank you for being here today. Hopefully everybody got some really awesome golden nuggets tips right there from Ed. I think the quality of air that we breathe should be the best, because we want to have a optimal health at the end of the day. So thank you for having us. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you for everybody to join me today. And if you need to know anything else about my show, please go to alexbalkit.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. And don't forget, my book is out, Parents Are Greatest Teachers. You can get it on Barnes & Noble now and on Amazon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Ed.
Take care.